When was your gut instinct correct and got you out of a bad situation? The police knocked on my door in the middle of the night. I was awake and expecting company, so I answered it, with the security screen door closed, and there were 2 cops standing there, asking to come in and get access to my backyard because there was a prowler reported. They looked legit, and there was a late model sedan with aerials on the back parked in my driveway, with a blue red light flashing on the dashboard. There was something a bit off about them. I can't really explain it, but something in the back of my mind was screaming at me. I asked them for their names, and told them to wait a minute while I called the station to confirm they were who they said they were. The one doing all the talking cracked the chest and tried to push the screen door open, so I slammed the wooden door closed and called the police. They disappeared and minutes later the actual, real police arrived. They left a car parked outside my house, and picked up the pair a couple of streets away while they were attempting to pull over a woman over who just left a service station. Was out camping with 2 friends one time and a game warden came across our campsite about an hour after dark. This is in the middle of the mountains of Tennessee and we knew this area fairly well, including the fact that we'd never seen one of these guys just appear like this. In fact, he didn't announce himself as approaching, and had no flashlight. We just had a fire going and we heard someone approaching. We were friendly to him and he said he was just doing a patrol. But I just had a very wrong feeling about this guy. When I looked at my buddies afterwards they both shot me very concerned looks too. When we were sure he was out of earshot, we spoke briefly how we were all sure this guy wasn't right and discussed what we would quickly do. We kept the fire going that night and made sure to stay up shifts around the fire as opposed to going to our tents and hammocks. One grabbed his pistol, I had my Bowie knife, and the other kept our hatchet within grabbing distance. We set up our lanterns in a broader area so we could see further and pick different sides of the fire to sit on, keeping our eyes and ears open all night. We talked like there was nothing wrong and cut up and laughed like normal, but like how any of us were going to bed. Throughout the whole night we heard noises and leaves shifting, nothing abnormal cause animals big and small, but we were more on edge. Sometime between 2 and 3 AM though we heard a different type of rustling that was more consistent with 2 sets of legs rather than 4 and it circled our area a few times, then walked off. It was that moment where every hair on your body stands up. Sure enough, a moment later, we heard louder footsteps approaching, and gosh darn, wouldn't you just know that it was that same warden guy? When he got to us he said, "Well, aren't you boys up kinda late?" We gave some bullshit excuse about all of us being insomniacs, which was pretty true for that night. He talked a bit longer and asked us how much longer we thought we'd be up, and we just said, "Till we get tired." He gave an uneasy smile and looked like he was thinking hard about something. I don't think he liked that none of us turned our backs on him or really even looked away. He told us he was gonna head back to his truck and head back down the mountain soon and for us to have a good night. We're in the middle of freaking nowhere, we would have heard any vehicle a mile away. He walked off and there was no noise near us at all. We heard more noises in the night we were suspicious of, but nothing came of it. Eventually it sounded like a four-wheeler was driving off as sunrise was getting ready to start. The first thing we did that morning was go to the nearest ranger station we knew of and brought this guy up. Nobody named that who looked like him was employed in that county. I still get chills to this day. About 2 weeks ago, I was wrapping up a visit with my brother. I was flying out early the next morning and decided to get an Airbnb closer to the airport than his house, 2 hours away, so no one would have to get up super early to drive me there and then drive back. My family, parents and sister were also visiting my brother at the same time, dropped me off at the house, where I was supposed to be staying in a private room with a private bathroom. The owners were not home when I arrived and left a key for me under the mat. I unlocked the door and my folks walked me in. My dad found the backyard door standing completely open. The yard was not fenced and there was no dog going in and out or anything. Very odd. I shrugged it off, figuring they just didn't latch it when they left a few hours prior to go to dinner in the city. My parents left and I went to my room to find no lock on the bedroom door. This is very off-putting as a young woman staying alone, and I dropped my heavy bag against the door to keep it shut. Not that it would keep anyone out for long. I started to look around for an outlet to plug my phone in and heard someone touching the doorknob and testing that it would open. I called my wife and whoever was touching the door stopped as soon as they heard my voice, and I heard footsteps quickly going down the hall. I also heard the bathroom, supposedly private, being used after a few minutes, and the hairs on the back of my neck started standing up. More footsteps. The phone number I was given for the host didn't work. And, again, no way to secure myself or my belongings. I bailed. I called my parents. They turned around and I gathered my stuff, which luckily I hadn't bothered to unpack. I stayed on the phone with my wife as I bolted down the stairs, and I heard someone cough not 2 feet to my left as I hit the landing, ran directly out of the house, ditching the key on the entry table, and waited at the street corner 3 houses down for my parents. Once they collected me, a car with its headlights off raced out of the cul-de-sac and down the road. My brother thought to get a picture of the license plate and recognized the car as the one that had been sitting in the driveway when we arrived, which my dad had noticed, too, and commented that it was a pretty crummy car for the neighborhood house we were at. Very creepy. Stayed at a DoubleTree and I got refunded about 85% of my stay. I was walking the 2 blocks from my work back to my car. It was dark, and hardly anyone around as most shops were closed in my sleepy little town. On the first corner was a real estate agent. A young male was there looking at the listings in the window. As I approached, he pulled his jacket up to his cheek and looked like he was looking for something in his pocket, but something raised the hairs in the back of my neck. It was like he didn't want me to see his face. As I walked past him, I could hear him walking behind me, so I slowed and looked in a few shop windows. Every time I stopped, he stopped. I crossed the road, he crossed the road. Now I was pretty sure he was following me. I didn't want to keep going to my car. It was in a multi-story car park. It was in an isolated spot and I knew no one else would be around or within shouting distance. I ducked into the only shop open, a video store, and pretended to look at movies whilst really watching him out the window. He waited for a while, then he crossed the street and disappeared down the street. I stupidly decided that the coast was clear and quickly headed to my car. As I got to the entrance of the car park, I heard him a couple of meters behind me. He must have hidden and waited for me. I was now trapped. The only way out of the car park was back where I came and he was there. If I continued to my car, I knew I couldn't get it opened and started before he reached me. I stopped, turned and faced him. He paused just at the entrance in the shadows, so I still couldn't see his face clearly. So I unleashed my inner fishwife. I yelled, swore and screamed at him, and he scampered like a little girl back off into the darkness. I ran to my car, locked it and took off. I phoned the police that evening and gave a description, as best I could. I knew he saw my car and license and it's pretty distinctive. The police went back to the garage the next night and waited. The man turned up with a friend for backup. Apparently 20-year-old 5-foot-tall fishwife me was scary, and was wandering around the cars and looked like he was waiting. They were stopped and searched and were both carrying hunting knives. They both were arrested, and got some jail time as far as I know. My instinct about this guy made me more alert and took notice of my surroundings and him, and I never parked there again. This is more of my friend's gut instinct that got me out of a bad situation, but the sentiment is there. Like 10 years ago when I was around 15. I went to an arcade in the mall with my best friend. I told her to meet me there as I was going to run to the restroom first. When I came back, she was standing at the arcade entrance with one of the workers. I heard her say, "Here comes the friend." Now I assume she was just chatting with him as she waited for me. As I approached, he said, "Your friend is a hottie." Now, at the formative years of 15, at this point I had never been hit on before. At least not so obvious. I was super flattered and got all shy and excited. He basically followed me and my friend around the whole time, hitting on me and talking with me. I was red from head to toe. I couldn't believe it. A guy was actually obviously hitting on me. Before we were getting ready to go, he asked me if he could have my number or email. I was a little unsure, but at that time I had a very hard time saying no to people. I was definitely a people pleaser, so I said okay. He said he only had paper and pen in the back room. Awfully convenient for him. And that I should follow him there and we could chat and get that contact info. Best friend was now starting to go into her usual mother hen mode. I could tell she was skeptical, but I was like, it'll just be a little bit. We go into the back room and he asks me how old I am. I told him I'm 15. This news dismayed him and he revealed, he's 25. But I guess it really didn't bother him enough. We chatted a bit in the back and I started getting a little anxious. Out of nowhere he starts making out with me. At this age I never made out with anyone before. Just a simple kiss. I'm shaking and get increasingly nervous. He asks me if I want to have sex in the back room and I tell him I shouldn't and he prodded further. At this time my friend starts pounding on the back room door. I immediately open it and she says we need to go. Now at first after she pulled me out she didn't know his age. She asked me what happened in there and I said we kissed. She seemed a little excited that this happened for me cause she knows at the time I was definitely boy crazy and a romantic. But then I told her he was 25 and she freaked out. She started yelling and saying she knew it and that she knew she had a bad feeling about me in there. Nothing really came of it after that. Things should have been reported but it just never got to that point. I was walking alone from my flat on Brick Lane to a bus stop near Liverpool Street Station at night. I wasn't sure, but I felt like someone was following me, so I stopped at a still quite busy Tesco entrance to rummage through my bag. Sure enough, the guy stopped too. I looked through my bag for my spray, but of course the one time I could have needed it I'd left it in another bag. I pretended to get a text, and went back the way I came from. Dude reversed direction too and kept following me. I stopped at a bar with lots of people outside and acted like I was waiting for someone. He leaned on a building across the road and stared at me. I couldn't go back to my flat. There was nobody in that direction, and there's a long stretch of road with no street lights and no traffic. That's scary even in a group of friends and no one following you. So I decided to stay near the bar, pretending to text, and occasionally wandering towards the tube station. He kept eyeing me and walked after me if I wandered too far. I was shitting my pants. My friends had been robbed at knife point a few months prior and I couldn't stop thinking about that, and what worse things could happen to me since I was alone. There's a police station near Liverpool Street Station, and I considered walking there to ask for someone to escort me home, but I didn't feel safe enough to actually walk there. I was about to actually call the police and had 999 ready on my phone, when I saw a large group of people approaching the station and about to walk through it. The man had his back to them and couldn't see them, so I pretended to wave at them, approached them quickly, and quietly slinked along with them through the station. He did follow me the short distance between the bar and the station, maybe calling my bluff or thinking it was just one person I was meeting, but when I acted like I knew the group and followed on their heels, he left off and stopped following me. I was scared shitless when the group dispersed and I was left walking to the bus stop alone. But at that point no one was following me and I just had to get on the bus. I called a friend just to let someone know where I was and kept talking until I got on the bus. I never found out about any crimes in that area around that time, but the intentions of a man discreetly following a lone woman at night aren't hard to guess. I feel like I really dodged a bullet there. Had I actually just told myself I was being stupid and kept walking, who knows what could have happened to me. I hope he didn't find another target.